It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler.
This has been in the works for a while. We're really excited to officially have the Gamecock Central Hour.
Chris Clark.
And JJ has accepted an invite to the Senior Bowl already, which is awesome, the Reese's Senior Bowl.
And Wes Mitchell.
I think he's well above 200 into like the 210 range. A dude in the weight room, too, like from a strength standpoint.
On the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
Minute after 11 o'clock, Wednesday morning. Welcome in to the Gamecock Central Hour here on 107.5 The Game. Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell here with you to discuss. What are we talking about today, guys? Just cheese, your favorite kinds of shoes, and what does your shirt say, Chris?
Not today, Satan.
Nice. Where'd you get that?
Wife ordered it for me. Couldn't tell you which probably online shop she got it from.
Yeah. That's cool. It's red. No, we have a lot to get to today. We have a poll question. South Carolina had a bunch of offensive players with media availability yesterday and some significant news for the Gamecocks just breaking here in the last hour or so. In fact, I don't know who broke this. First place I saw it was Wes Mitchell over on Gamecock Central. Not good news if you're a South Carolina fan. In fact, I was just talking injury news at the end of the last hour, and I had not seen this yet. I was talking about Sam Hartman and Ricky Pearsall for Florida, but South Carolina is now down a guard on its basketball team. Abrima Deba, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, has suffered an Achilles injury and will miss the entire 2022-23 season. This is an injury suffered in an on-court summer workout, as reported by Wes Mitchell. But Wes, since you have literally done the reporting here, you should just tell me so I don't read the article.
Well, yeah, Wes did no reporting here. This is a release from South Carolina. I read the email that Michael Debates and the folks over there sent out. So
okay, wait,
I can tell you it's very much true. Like it is completely official.
Yeah,
good job reading it.
I didn't mean to insinuate that it wasn't, but all the Carolina emails that I used to get, I had a box set up for it, and now they're going to different places, so I don't find them as quickly.
Actually,
anyway.
You probably ticked somebody off over there, and you got kicked off the list.
Look, I get in trouble with them. Well, I don't get in trouble with them because they can't get me in trouble, but they have issues with me a lot, and I have been I've been out of the line of fire recently, so maybe it's a holdover from something else I said. But
there you go. Turn it into a new
In
leaf.
any case, yeah, it's a. Well, does a report make it sound like it's not true?
No, I mean if I reported it, better be true.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. Anyway,
but I'm saying I'm not going to take any credit because I really don't.
Well, I mean, I'm just giving you credit because
basketball.
I'm literally reading your version of the write up on Gamecock Central because I had not seen the email because it's like being it's being flagged for some reason in my inbox. Anyway, that's a significant loss for a South Carolina basketball team that was already. Yes, they got G.G. Jackson. This is a South Carolina team that still was going to have his work cut out for him in terms of replacing everything they lost last year to put themselves back in a position to be competitive in the SEC. And Deba is now someone that has played a lot of college basketball games that was theoretically going to provide a little bit of a steadying presence in the backcourt there for Carolina. So this is a big piece of the puzzle now out for the season, before the season gets started.
Yeah, and I mean, South Carolina, obviously their class, Jackson is going to get, all the headlines. Aside from, that freshman class, aside from G.G. Jackson, we saw some video evidence on Twitter the other day. Some intriguing talents there, right? But this transfer class is also going to need to do some work for the Gamecock basketball team this season. And so Deba's a guy, it's a great point, Pearson. He's played a lot of basketball. He's started 87 games for Coastal, played in 90. And while he hadn't, torn up the stat sheet, he's a guy with size who has a good skill set. I remember when Wes and I were talking to Jamie Shaw of On 3 about him around the time South Carolina started recruiting him, maybe right after he committed. One of the things that he mentioned is he's a very skilled passer, but that he actually has, the athleticism and the ability to score more. Jamie said, he could take a few more shots a game, and he'll probably need to take a few more shots a game for South Carolina. So, this isn't a team that returns tons and tons of talent, as we know. It's pretty significant roster turnover, and so this is a guy that was, figured to factor in pretty heavily to their plans. So feel bad for the kid. That's a tough injury for sure, an Achilles injury. And a tough blow for the basketball team.
For whatever it's worth, I've at least heard that that's not a painful injury, which is weird because to me that sounds excruciating and horrible. I remember I was listening to Steve Smith, like the Panthers' Steve Smith, talk about it one time, and he's like, you don't really feel it. You just can't walk right anymore. He said you can hear it more than you can feel it. Just sort of a weird note there. In any case, you mentioned 87 starts. Chris, I don't have the numbers in front of me. I don't think you do. I don't know if what South Carolina is returning. You mentioned the roster turnover. It's guys leaving, transfer portal, this, that, and the other. I wonder if South Carolina has 87 starts on its team in terms of returners right now. Because I would think not. Like, to your point about how important it is to have the veteran guy, I don't think Carolina has 87 guys that have started in the Garnet and Black.
Yeah, I was going to say in the Garnet and Black, that would be the key to that. We would need to go through there, but I mean to kind of count it up. But I cannot imagine that that's the case. They do have a decent amount of experience now, coming into the team, but it's guys that have done it elsewhere, not at South Carolina. So yeah, I mean a lot of roster turnover. I mean Michie Johnson, who had not played a ton of minutes at Ohio State, had some injury history of his own. Deba obviously I don't have it in front of me either, Pearson, but gosh, he's probably one of, if not the most experienced guys on the team. Hayden Brown from Citadel has a lot of experience. So, yeah, I mean, definitely a lot of turnover, definitely a lot of minutes to be had, whether it's from this transfer class or whether it's this freshman class. Losing Deba, certainly a difficult proposition.
Yeah, a blow there for sure. Yeah, Josh Gray, Javon Benson, Trayvon Minot, Chico Carter, Jacoby Wright, the only guys that I think are returning with any Carolina starts, and just a handful between them. So
yeah,
a big blow there for South Carolina. Again, that's a release from the university, but as we get more reaction from around the South Carolina basketball program, we'll pass that along to you guys. Since we're talking about injuries here, I just mentioned it right before you guys came on. Ricky Pearsall going down for Florida, a wide receiver transfer from Arizona State, a big loss for them. I was listening to a preview, an SEC preview last week. It was like DraftKings or one of the betting websites, and one of the guys mentioned thinking that Florida might have the worst wide receiving group in the SEC, which I'm just not used to Florida being talent deficient.
That should never happen.
Yeah, that no should never happen. Is that real? There's no way it's worse than like Vanderbilt. I just kind of always assume that like whatever young players Florida has, even if they're not proven, are going to come in and be talented. But is Florida really looking at that much of a deficit in terms of perimeter playmakers this upcoming season?
I'm refreshing myself by looking over their roster. I mean, look, Justin Shorter, who began his career at Penn State. I mean, he didn't put up huge numbers last year, but he's a talented kid. Xavier Henderson's a talented kid out of Miami. Trent Whittemore's played a lot. I mean, they've got some guys. I think that's probably, While it's kind of prove it mode for them. So they may be like in that bottom half or bottom third or however you want to like quantify it. But worse than, like you said, Vanderbilt, I don't know if I can get there.
Yeah.
But not as good as it should be. That's very fair.
Right.
Because you don't look at this roster and go, oh, stud, like we've done with some of their teams in the past.
If you're in the state of Florida and you are the University of Florida, this should, and I know it's a brand new staff, as Chris throws stuff at me over here, but it is a brand new staff, so you can't put blame much on them, but man, they have such good athletes every single year in that state. It is hard for me to imagine that that's actually the case. And I am glad to hear that we're carrying over our Vandy hate from GC Live. Like Vandy is kind of like the go-to, just the punching bag.
Yeah. It's not hate, though. Nobody hates Vanderbilt. No one cares enough about Vanderbilt to hate them.
Yeah, hate's probably the wrong word, but there is some Vandy hate. Like, you don't hate them, but there's some Vandy, like, we're hating on Vandy.
I get it, yeah. I mean, it's all factual, though.
Yeah.
I mean, was it just yesterday we were talking about their stadium and how bad it is.
High school it is.
But
so that carried over from the show to GC Live, now back into the show?
I want to say we got to credit. I think GC Live was the genesis of all the Vandy haterade.
Yeah.
It's like
we're
a running
definitely
joke.
the first people to make fun of Vanderbilt in the SEC.
Right.
It's a very original concept. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, we would just laugh because it seems like every show we would be like, oh, man, like we're bagging on Vandy again. Sorry. You know?
But not really.
But that's just how it is. Poor
But
Vandy.
I mean, honestly, like, that's why they don't need to be in the SEC anymore. They're never even worth putting in the conversation. Like, one of the most memorable moments from the entire event that was Media Days, 4 days of coverage, and it was Clark Lee saying to Vanderbilt, if any other coach at any other program said that, it would have been like, wow, that's a bold claim. But, like, if Shane Beamer said that about South Carolina, it's like, whoa, that's probably not going to happen, but this guy's very ambitious. And, like, he's going to bring back the Steve Spurrier days. There's just, like, no precedent for anyone associated with Vanderbilt to say that. And it's like, it was just literally hilarious. That was like the biggest takeaway from Media Days.
You know, the funny thing is Derek Mason said not the same thing, but something like similar. I think it was kind of like like people that get, and you know what? I'm sure if we went back and looked, James Franklin probably said something similar, right? Because when you get in those roles, you have to kind of.
Well, then he won 9 games, didn't he?
He won
I was
9
going to say,
games
James
twice.
Franklin at least, he did something at Vanderbilt that was like ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really. So he kind of backed it up.
That might be one of the most impressive coaching feats in the last 20 years.
I can't think of a more impressive.
If you really think about it.
It was amazing.
Vanderbilt hasn't won a conference game in like 3 years now, right?
It's been a while. I mean, at Vanderbilt, what did James Franklin go there? He
was
won
only there for
9
3
games,
seasons
2 years in a row.
Yeah.
He went 9-4 and 9-4, and he went 9-7 overall in the conference. Those 2 years. First year they were 2-6.
Wow.
But that's pretty doggone good. That's a tough job. But yeah.
I don't know how we got here.
I don't know.
Always a safe landing spot for any SEC football talk. We were talking about wide receivers for Florida. Let's change gears. We'll take a quick break here. I want to come back. I'll reset the poll question, and we'll talk wide receivers. South Carolina's got a bunch of them, a bunch of guys that, yes, have a lot to prove. Seems like there's some talent there. A bunch of guys that feel like they could very earnestly be the number 2 option for South Carolina next year. We'll see what Wes and Chris think about who that will end up being.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
$11:19 Wednesday morning. Welcome back into the Gamecock Central Hour here on 107.5 The Game. Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell here with you. And, you know, guys, you know what it's a great day for?
Yes.
What?
Firehouse Subs.
Always a great day for Firehouse Subs. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Firehouse Subs, 12 locations in the Midlands and a 13th on the way. That, you know, when I say the Midlands, we're counting from Columbia, even all the way to Sumter, but a new one coming in Casey that's going to have, from the looks of it, guys, a drive-through. Super pumped about that. That'll you know, make things run even more smoothly inside Firehouse Subs, but you could still get your fresh, hot Firehouse Subs, all sorts of sandwiches, fresh and quick by using the Rapid Rescue online ordering service at firehousesubs.com, or you can download the Firehouse Subs app. We appreciate Larry Chandler and Firehouse Subs for being a part of the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour.
That's a lot of different ways to get a delicious sandwich in your face this afternoon. So,
Rapid Rescue is the way to go.
Absolutely. So, poll question for today. Who will South Carolina's number 2 wide receiver be behind Josh Vann? And, of course, I'm excluding Jaheim Bell because, for whatever reason, he's still officially listed as a tight end. Before I get your answer, is it a safe assumption that Josh Vann will finish the season Carolina's number 1 wide receiver?
First of all, define, we're talking just leading receiver caught the most passes for the most yards, correct?
I would say
perception?
So. I would say so. I mean, there's also, like, you know, maybe if you have a guy that's clear-cut number 1 and he gets a lot of extra attention from the defense and opens things up. So, I mean, however you want to think about it. But, like, at the end of the season, you'll know who their number 1 is.
Yeah, you know, right now, August 10th, I would still probably give the edge to Josh, but also I don't think you can just assume that either.
Mm-hmm.
The way this thing's going to play out, I think it's going to be much more like, you remember those years when it was like right after Alshon left, and then South Carolina didn't even really necessarily have a guy that you would just say, oh, that's their absolute number one. It was they spread the ball around. It was Bruce Ellington. It was Nicky Jones. It was Ace Sanders.
Demir Bird.
It was Demir Bird. And the ball,
and a lot of tight ends.
All those guys looked similar. They were smaller. They'll have a little bit, I would say, more diverse skill set with the room this year. But it was kind of like, all right, pick your poison as a defense. You're not even going to feel like you have to double one of those guys necessarily,
right,
but they could all get open. I think it's going to be similar for South Carolina this year. There's really any number of guys that could end up being the number one receiver. I have one in mind that would be my answer to your poll question, and that I also think could push for number one.
Well, is it fair to say that Carolina has like 6 or 7 2 and 3s, or is that disrespectful to Josh Vann? Well, actually, I'm not worried about being disrespectful to him. Is that a fair characterization? He was the number one wide receiver almost by default last year. He never felt to me like a number one option, but did you see enough last year to feel like he can be a real bona fide number one guy?
Let me answer real quick, Chris. I think, you were talking about Matt Rule earlier, and you said this feels very college-y.
Mm-hmm.
To like say, oh, this guy's a number one and this guy's a number two feels very like NFL to me.
Okay.
I feel like if you go out there and you are the leading receiver and you sort of take over a position when you really did not have a lot of consistent help last year, then you have earned being a number one, in my view. So, I think Josh Vann was the number one last year. Josh Vann enters this season as the number one as well. Does he remain the number? If he's not the number one, assuming he's still healthy, then that's a good sign for your program, though, for your team, because that means somebody else just kind of took it, I think. But, I think you got to give Josh a lot of credit for stepping up last year, and that was a huge question mark going into the season.
Yeah, it's it's fascinating to look back, like Wes referenced after Alshon Jeffrey left. And so for me, I kind of look back at 2012, which was South Carolina's best ever team, in my opinion, and a good offense. And then you look like at 2014, which is not a great team because the defense was awful, but the offense was really good. And you had two different kind of vibes, isn't the right word, but you got it done two different ways. So the 2012 team, you had like your top two receivers were Ace Sanders and Bruce Ellington. You might not think of those guys as a number one, right? Like you're saying, Pearson, like there's just this dominant guy like an Alshon Jeffrey. But
do you have their yards in front of you?
Yeah, so Ace Sanders had 45 catches, 531 yards, 9 touchdowns. Bruce Ellington had 40 catches, more yards, 600, had 7 touchdowns.
Really?
The next highest wide receiver, so not a running back or a tight end who actually had more catches, the next highest guy was Demir Bird. He had 14 catches, and Nicky Jones had 12.
Wow.
You look at 14, they had the alpha guy. They had Pharaoh Cooper, caught 69 passes, 1,136 yards, 9 touchdowns. Then you had another guy who went over 40 catches, and Nicky Jones. Demir Bird had 20. Then you have backs and tight ends.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to think it'll be like a mix of those two. So I don't know if there's a 60, 70 catch guy on the roster this year.
What did Josh have last year?
Josh last year had 43.
Okay.
So, and the reason I think that, I think they're going to involve the backs. You're going to have Jaheim's going to get a lot of touches. Guys, all these guys that were, running through in your poll question, they're going to have. So if they have two receivers, true receivers, not tight ends or backs, that have 40 catches each, the year's probably gone very well in offense.
Because Jaheim's also probably going to have 40.
Could, yeah. I mean, I don't think they have a 70 catch guy. Could be wrong. I don't think they have a 70 catch guy and then a 40, and then I just don't know if there's that dominant of a guy. But I think there's several guys that are capable of, upping their game and getting into that territory. 30, 40.
When do we stop calling Jaheim a tight end?
I was going to save that for the end of the show, but my question for you is, what do you want to call him?
Wide receiver?
No, he's not a wide receiver.
Why not?
Because he's not. He's in the tight end room. He lines up all over the field.
How many times will he have his hand in the dirt this year?
I don't know.
6?
No, much more than that. He's not a wide receiver. He lines up like an H-back as like an offset tight end. He lines up attached to the line of scrimmage sometimes. He rarely.
He did last year. I imagine he will less with Stogner being there, though, right?
But when they're in 2 tight ends, sometimes he is going to be lined up on the line of scrimmage.
Does he spend more time with Jody or Justin in practice?
Jody, I believe. It's kind of interesting. They do actually move him around in practice and put him in the different groups so he can work on the fundamentals. Like when they're doing fundamental position group work, but he rarely, if ever, do you see him line up actually outside, like on the perimeter as a wide receiver.
But he'll line up in the slot.
You'll see him in the slot, but that's every tight end does that.
That's a very common, Brock Bowers, and who's very much a tight end. He's out in the slot,
but Brock Bowers is going to block more than Jaheim will this year,
I would imagine, and that
in the box, I should.
That's
say.
a smart move.
Yeah,
because he's he's bigger. And
like Travis Kelce's a wide receiver, even though he's a tight end. Like George Kittle is a tight end. He'll catch 50, 60, 70 balls or whatever, but he's also going to get in the box and block a lot. Like I feel like that has to be an essential part of the time. I'm fine with it, and I'm not too worried about what it's called. But I guess I am in this case, just because it's just funny because in no way is he a tight end, but he's still a tight end.
But in no way is he a wide receiver.
Yeah, I mean Marcus Satterfield calls him a wide back. I
like
was
Debo.
in favor of them literally on his official Gamecocks online bio, just like just call him like a wide back.
Why don't we carry this over from recruiting? Y'all have athletes in recruiting all the time.
Yep.
Why not carry that over to the roster?
You could, if you wanted to.
Just put his position as JB.
Yeah, because he also might play some fullback this year, Wes. You've made a pretty compelling case for why he might either be a short yardage running back or even a fullback in short yardage situations.
And he did that last year, too.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but it's pretty common to have your H-back line up as a fullback. Like, that's kind of part of the job.
So he's more of an H-back than a tight end or a wide receiver.
Yes, but an H-back is always in the tight end room. That's a type of tight end.
You also don't see H-backs lined up at running back, proper a lot or in the slot a lot, right? So
Greg says call him a flex end or a flex out.
Flex in.
Or just a flex. Oh, that's what he is. He's like your flex player in fantasy.
Okay.
So he can stand in for...
He's a dude. That's
that is. We were talking about that before the show. By the way, Pearson, you're talking about running the board yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
My vote. I don't know about Wes. I would like to change my entrance. What I'm talking. I'm talking about the Senior Bowl or something randomly.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the intro sounds great.
Yeah, I didn't cut that. I do cut most of my intros. Terry cut that one.
That's the best thing you said in the last year.
Terry, please don't fire me from the show. I'm not saying it's bad. It sounds really good. Yeah, they're like, guys, we did not have a lot of material to work with. That was the only thing you said that wasn't
compelling thing
awful.
Chris said.
But Wes, he says a dude on his. Somebody on the Insiders forum yesterday literally asked me, Wes, they were like, how many times a day does Wes say dude? I said not enough.
That's true. I think this was before both of you were here. I think maybe I talked to Wes on the phone that day. But since we're talking about Jaheim and what position he isn't, Chris, what was your reaction? Well, I'm assuming you listened to it. I don't know. Marcus Lattimore on the Believe podcast said the other day, don't be surprised if Jaheim Bell gets 100 carries this year.
100 carries?
He said 100 carries.
So Condre White had 88 last year.
Yeah.
Kevin Harris had 152.
It didn't seem like that.
That does not...
Down the stretch, though.
Like, I wrote him down the stretch.
Yeah. If you had asked me, I looked that up a couple weeks ago. If you had asked me who had the most carries last year, I would have said Z or Quan or whatever they call him.
Here's the one I don't believe. Marshawn Lloyd had 64 carries.
He had more carries than Juju.
Yeah.
Didn't feel like it.
That does not feel like it.
Well, in 63 of those, there was a busted assignment on the offensive line and he got hit in the backfield.
Well, I love Marcus. I think giving Jaheim 100 carries probably a solid strategy because however you get him the ball, pretty good strategy. I can't get there, Wes.
No. I've already said I can't get there, but I also said
You said like 40 was your over-under?
I said it may be, that was my over-under, and I would probably go over, actually. I think it'll be far closer than the shock of, wait, what? Like, I could see it being, people being like, well, Marcus kind of knew something. Yeah. I don't think that was a Marcus Lattimore, let me just throw a hot take out there.
Yeah, because Lattimore does not, as far as I know, just like say stuff like I do.
I think that was a Marcus Lattimore, hey, I know something. This guy's going to be a big part of the offense. Let me throw out a big number to just represent that he's going to run the football more than people think.
Yeah.
100 touches?
Sure. Yeah. 8+ a game.
Seems I can doable. Get there.
Yeah. Although he had 0 games of 8+ touches last year, which is interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, look, the only person on the offense, there were maybe 3 guys on the offense last year where you go, they were really not even maxed out, but like kind of got to where they should be. And I think it was Z. White, Harris when he came back healthy. You know, he finished the year fairly strong. And Josh Van.
Yeah.
Because with Jaheim, like, you saw some things, but what the narrative, and I'd say it's not even, narrative has a bad connotation sometimes, but like the thought going throughout the whole year was, well, they're not using Jaheim enough.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but there really wasn't anybody used enough because the offense, you know, just didn't
they only
run
ran
like
30 plays a game, so just limited opportunities.
Yeah, limited opportunities.
Yeah. All right, we'll leave Jaheim aside. We'll come back to the wide receiver question. That is the poll. Y'all keep voting. You have about 20 minutes left if you would like to cast a final vote here on who you think Carolina's number 2 wide receiver will be behind Josh Van. We'll get Wes and Chris's answers next.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
$11:37 Wednesday morning. Welcome back in Gamecock Central Hour here on 107.5 The Game. Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell here with me. That will look like some air bass, Chris.
Yeah, that was like that was air bass with a pick, which you need for some heavier songs.
I thought it was just air guitar. You didn't tell me it was air bass too. Holding out on us.
I can do it all.
Yeah, clearly. If you want to get us on Twitter, he is at GC Chris Clark. Wes is at Wes Mitchell GC. I'm at Pearson Fowler. However you want to be a part of the show. The Love Chevy phone line and the text line open for you too, 803-404-6100. Poll question today, who will be Carolina's number 2 receiver behind Josh Van, excluding Jaheim Bell, whom we just talked about extensively. Wes doesn't like to go first, so you have to go first, Chris.
I am going to say Juice Wells. So it's a little bit of a projection. We're not even counting running backs or other non-Jaheim Bell people, right?
Unless you think Juju's going to have 36 catches.
I don't think you can rule out a running back being a number 2 receiver, like a Lloyd or anybody, you know. But no, I kind of, if we're assuming Josh is number 1 for right now, which I think it's, I don't know if the safe pick, but it's it makes sense to do that based on last year and being with prove-it mode with some other guys. I'm going to say Juice. I mean, look at what he did at James Madison. I know it's a lower level, but he was very, very productive. He's been impressive in the spring. The staff really likes him. I think it could end up being a number of guys, but that, if you just kind of stand on a table and pick one, that's what I go with.
So when Juice signed, people were pumped. When watched the James Madison film, the records, everybody was like, this guy's going to be the dude. And then Corey Rucker signed. What was that, like a couple of months later? And it was like, no, this is the dude. And there was something about Corey Rucker that was, I don't know, maybe more intriguing to fans for whatever reason. Maybe it was just newer. And then, of course, once he got named to the Biletnikoff watch list, it was like, well, this guy. And now it seems like the pendulum is swinging back to Juice. So I guess I'll throw it to you, Wes, now to get your answer. But it seemed like Juice was the guy, and then it seemed like Corey was the guy. and now it seems like Juice is the guy again, and I can't figure out why the change is because we haven't seen either one of them play any new snaps.
Well, I feel like you're not confusing, that's not the word, but you're mixing up fan discussion and perception for reality, which, Corey comes in, and Corey is a huge get for South Carolina. I tend to think that the advantage Juice has is that he was here for the entire spring. And you look at this offense, it is distinctly an NFL offense. It is designed to get guys ready for the next level as far as how it is structured. It's not one of these offenses that necessarily you're just going to come in and be like, oh, I did all this in high school. So I think the big advantage there is like Juice understands the scheme. He's been in it for an entire spring, for 15 practices, had an outstanding spring. And, I think that was more about, well, hey, now Rucker is the new guy. People looked at his film. They looked at that. What was the massive game he had at Arkansas State where he had like 3 touchdowns and 200-something yards receiving? I mean, just went off in a game last year. So,
and he's a Blitnikoff watch list guy. Like, that means that gets fans' attentions, right?
That means
that's based on something.
That means nothing.
Why does that mean nothing?
All at the same time.
That just, who cares about
look, I don't care about the watch list because it's like 100 people. Watch lists are so stupid. There's 100 people on them. They don't mean anything, but they picked Corey Rucker when they could have picked Juice, when they could have picked Josh Vann, when they could have picked Jaheim Bell. Somebody put Corey on that list for some reason. If it's totally random, you would see more guys like, that guy doesn't even play for this team. Like Corey might not even be getting, he's not going to be getting the most snaps. He might not be getting the second most snaps. He might not be getting the third most snaps at wide receiver. Why is he on that list?
Well, he was a great player at Arkansas State, I think, is part of it.
Yeah.
Putting him on there over Josh was a little disrespectful to Josh Vann, I feel like, for what he did last year. It almost feels like it was an oversight or something to not have Josh Vann on there. But, I think, and I'll go back to what I said maybe, I guess, last week, the receiver rotation may look one way on September 3rd. It may look very different by, November 3rd. Because I think you've got some guys that have been in the scheme, obviously, for a full year now. You've got guys that have been in the scheme for at least the spring. And then, I think Rucker is a guy that as the season progresses, will probably start to come on. And, who are their best 3, I think will be an intriguing question. And does it match up, like if you're kind of creating a little matrix to get them all on the field at the same time as far as who's playing what position? And generally when a guy comes in new, you want him to learn one receiver spot, and then you branch them out. But they have several guys that can play multiple receiver spots. So I think it'll be very interesting to see who are the first 3 out there, against Georgia State. Who are the next 3 out there against Georgia State? But then same question 7 weeks later, what is, what's the answer to that question then? But if you ask me, poll question, give me an answer, stop, bouncing all around, I'm probably going to go Juice Wells as well.
Yeah, I mean, the list thing can be a little weird. I mean, you remember after Kevin Harris's huge season, he didn't even make the 10 finalists or whatever you call it for the Doak Walker Award. Remember, it was like a big thing around here. Like, how can you not? He wasn't on the preseason list, which made total sense. I mean, he hadn't done enough at that point to be considered, but after the season, like statistically, he was one of the best in the country, and so people are going, oh. So, I mean,
I don't put a lot of stock into those things, but it's just like, as opposed to other options on this team, it seemed random. It's like maybe they are just like pulling a Scrabble tile out of the bag. Right. But if that were the case, I think you'd see more random selections on there, and otherwise it mostly makes sense. But
yeah, I mean, Corey did. I mean, to Wes's point about, he had a game last year, first game of the year actually against Central Arkansas. He caught 9 passes and 3 touchdowns. He ended the year with 59 catches and 9 touchdowns. But Juice Wells, obviously, he caught over 80 passes last year. He played 2 seasons at James Madison, and he's set records, there. So production, when a guy dominates lower levels like that, that's not an absolute certainty that he's going to come, dominate at the next level, but you've seen what the guy can do.
Yeah.
It's not against high school competition.
It was 2 seasons in 1 year at that. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, spring and fall. That's right. All right, well, I got to come back around to one guy who I feel like is missing, and maybe one other significant part of the equation, too, in terms of the personnel groupings that Carolina is going to be running. So we'll wrap up the poll question next.
It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour, presented by Firehouse Subs, founded by firemen with Pearson Fowler, Chris Clark, and Wes Mitchell on the home of the Gamecocks, 107.5 The Game.
All right, a couple minutes left here in the Gamecock Central Hour, 11:49 on a Wednesday morning. It is Wednesday, my dudes. Pearson, Wes, Chris here with you in the Herndon Chevy Studios. And just a couple hours away from this 5-part docuseries dropping on ESPNU, the Welcome Home.
I'm pumped.
Are y'all Hard Knocks watchers or shows in that vein, Last Chance U, whatever?
Yes, not hardcore Hard Knocks, but I actually I had it on the iPad this morning while I was doing some other stuff. But I'm excited for this. The Hard Knocks theme is like the perfect theme, I feel like. I don't know, when you hear that music, you just know Hard Knocks is coming on. My expectations are pretty high for the special, so I'm excited. I think we're going to even do like a review recap on Gamecock Central after each episode, and so we're all in on that. I think it's going to be fun.
Do you have any expectations, anything that you want to see or think you're going to see, Chris?
Every time I think of Hard Knocks, I always think of the guy trying to get into the facility with the key card and he gets locked out.
Yeah.
I wonder if there'll be a moment like that.
Yeah.
No, I think there's going to be...
He shows up for class and it's like, your scholarship has been revoked.
Well, that can't happen.
No.
Anymore.
That's the only equivalent of your card not working to get into the building.
That would be way worse than your...
I have a feeling it's not going to be that kind of show.
No, I think it's going to be really cool. Some in-depth story. I don't know what to... I honestly haven't heard like, hey, this is going to happen on tonight's show or any of the shows, but I think it's just going to be a really cool, peek behind the curtain of what they do.
Yeah. I mean, now this is the first one of these college series they've done, right? This is not part of an ongoing series.
Right. They, I think Showtime maybe did a college one. Somebody did something on Florida State a couple of years ago. So there have been college ones that have been in the same vein as Hard Knocks, but this is the first one that this company has done, first one that I believe has been on ESPNU. And I think it is going to – I was watching the trailer today. It had Josh Van and talking about being a father, and, I think there was another player's father being interviewed. And so I think there are going to be some – on Hard Knocks, it's like half football. Mm-hmm. It's half, hey, what's going on in these guys' lives, in real life. Well. So I think it'll be interesting to see what that split is, and how much of it is like meeting room type stuff and all access and all this, and what part is more like features on the players' lives.
Yeah, could be a very cool blueprint. I look forward to watching this, not only this series, but if this is something they do on a regular basis and highlight a different college football program, could just be another cool insight into a bunch of major college football programs. 803-404-6100. Hampton is on hold on the Love Chevy phone line. He wants to talk about today's poll question. Who will Carolina's number 2 wide receiver be behind Josh Van at the end of the season?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me in. Wes, it's always a privilege, man. I got to become a member of Gamecock Central, most definitely. Guys, I chose DeCarrion Joyner, I guess, because he's been around the program. I know Juice Wells will be a valuable asset, but do you think Wells will be able to adjust to the SEC type play?
Yeah, I think so, and I appreciate the phone call, Hampton. And by the way, we got a 50% off on Gamecock Central right now, so perfect time for you to come on over. But, yeah, let me throw that in there. But, appreciate the call, man. I think with Wells, the thing, and Chris, you weigh in here too, man, I think the thing that makes me believe he's going to step right in is this guy just plays with a chip on his shoulder. Like, he's already well put together from a physical standpoint, came in already as, I don't want to say a physically dominant player, but just physically looks the part of SEC wide receiver. Like, I don't think you look at the guy and you're like, this guy came from FCS. He actually looks like, a highly recruited athlete. If you just put him beside another guy like that, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And he just competes his tail off. He's willing to block as well. Like, he's one of these guys that kind of almost invents a reason to be ticked off at the guy across from him. Like, kind of the Jordan mindset of, this guy's looking at me funny. So I like everything he brings to the table, just across the board as a receiver.
Yeah, and when you look at, obviously the production's impressive, and you go, okay, well, it's a lower level, so there will be an adjustment. Yes, there will be, but you also just look at his physical attributes, just seeing him at practice and how he can move, the quickness, how he can get open, how he plays, like Wes alluded to. It gives you reason to think that it's probably going to translate pretty well.
Thanks for the call, Hampton. The poll question is wrapping up. 54% of you say Juice, 27% say Corey Rucker, 10% say Xavier Legette, and 9% say Dakereon Joyner will be the number 2 receiver. Let me ask you this. We only have about 2 minutes here, so we'll try to keep it short. Carolina will be in 12 personnel more than any other personnel grouping this season, probably, correct?
Probably.
So the 2 wide receivers they're rolling out there are Josh Van and Juice. And not Josh. I was just compelled by the case you made for XL the other day. I kind of thought that was going to be your vote, and I'm surprised only 10% of people voted for him. But if they only have 2 wide receivers out there, don't you think it'll be Josh and XL?
Well, it's going to depend on who wins that job out of Legette and
But Juice
Wells.
is playing that same Z.
Yeah, well, and Legette's playing both outside spots, I think. But yeah, Wells and Legette have definitely been at times working at the same spot, and I believe primarily working at the same spot. Obviously, we see less and less.
Right.
So I can't say that definitively. They've been moving guys around, as is very common early in practice. So we'll see. But I don't think they're going to be necessarily just always in 2 tights. Like they're going to be in 3 wide at time. But here's the thing: there will be times where maybe Stogner comes off the field and it's Jaheim Bell plus 3 true wide receivers as well. And there'll be times when Jaheim Bell's at running back.
And we don't have enough time to dive into this fully, but keep in mind, South Carolina has a lot of personnel packages that'll be based on matchups or just, so it's not just, okay, we got 2 tight ends, so it's our top 2 tight ends or it's our top running back. They have specific personnel packages that'll say Juju's in the game now. Jaheim's in the game at this spot. This receiver's here. So that's just, another layer.
Yeah. Well, and this is a fun discussion, one that we'll circle back to as we especially start to dig a little bit more into the position groups as we get closer and closer to the season and as the depth chart starts to resolve itself a little bit here, which we imagine will start to shake out in the next couple of weeks. But that is all we have time for today. Appreciate, again, all of you being a part of the show and listening. As always, we'll be back in full force tomorrow. Plenty of thoughts on the Welcome Home series on ESPNU, plus any other Carolina football news that comes our way. Halftime show's coming up next.